Hello everybody, it's me Andy and welcome to another Brain Attack music video. On the 28th of May 2013 I had my stroke, cerebellar stroke. So 28th of May this year, 2021, is my 8-year anniversary, and I have to confess I didn't actually realise it was 8 years until the date had passed and like kind of something triggered in my brain. The longer you get away from your event, the more that happens. But I thought what I'd do is I put together some lessons that I've learnt over the last 8 years that might be useful for you guys who are a little bit closer to your stroke than I am to think about and information to use. So here we go, things that I've learnt over the last 8 years. Thanks for watching. Unless you've been through this experience, it's almost impossible to understand what it's like. So the sorts of comments that we get from other people are well-meaning, I think, in the main, but in many ways inappropriate. Varying from the, "Oh, you look okay," which is always based on, therefore, an external appearance means that everything's okay in here. Doesn't work like that, does it? We know that. So it varies from, "You look okay," to, "Come on, you've been off work for a couple of years now, you lazy sod, get back to work." So we have to factor in other people's lack of understanding, other people's lack of will to understand because they just don't want to go there, other people's intolerance because we might become an inconvenience to them. Luckily, I've not experienced that myself, but I see a lot of this on stroke survivors groups on social media, where there is basically a lack of tolerance from friends and family as to the stroke survivor's situation. Not only a lack of tolerance, but a lack of understanding and a lack of compassion. And I think the key thing for us to get across to friends and family is this is a brain injury. We have brain damage. And I think when it's put in those terms, it's not like shaking off the flu or shaking off a cold or getting over a broken leg or a broken limb or whatever. This is something that is brain injury, brain damage, has a long-term legacy effect. This isn't something that you shake off after a couple of weeks in bed and go, "Yep, the fever's gone, the sweats have gone, the runny nose has gone, the cough has gone, I'm good to go." Not like that at all. So what I've learned now is when I say to people, "Oh yeah, I had a stroke," all the rest of it, and they kind of go, "Oh." Whereas if you say to people, "Yeah, I've got a brain injury, I've got brain damage." "Oh, well, how did that happen then? What was that, car accident, was it?" Or there's kind of an engagement. Now I know it's a bit naughty because it's a bit like casting out the bait and then reeling it in, but actually you might have to do that. So for me, it's about helping people understand a wee bit by saying, "I have a brain injury, I have brain damage." One of the really tough things that we need to do is to come to terms with the fact that we have a brain injury, we have brain damage, and that gives us both physical deficits and mental and emotional deficits. And it's really tough, was for me anyway, really tough to come to terms with that and realise what the implications of those deficits were, both physical and mental and emotional, what the implications of those deficits were on a day-to-day basis in terms of trying to live a life. And that's a really hard issue to get to grips with. I reckon it took me a good 2-3 years, maybe longer, to come to terms with that and work within it, work within my limitations. And particularly the main one for me would be the neurofatigue, would be to actually learn to curtail my natural instincts, which is just to get on and do stuff. And I had to learn to curtail that a bit in order to manage my life better, because what I was doing is I was crash and burn, do stuff, crash and burn, do stuff, crash and burn. And of course, people only saw me doing stuff. So they might see me for a few hours and think, oh, you know, he's doing well. They wouldn't see the next 7 days when I was laid up, unable to move, unable to function, brain dead, gone. They wouldn't see that because I wouldn't go out. They maybe then see me the following week for another couple of hours and go, God, yeah, he's doing really well, isn't he? And again, they wouldn't see me crashing and burning for the next 7 days. So I had to learn to moderate my lifestyle, which meant stopping doing something when actually I felt okay. And that was really difficult. So we need to come to terms with where we're at. Yes, that may change, but in order to live from day 1, post-stroke, day 10, day 30, day 60, whatever, we need to come to terms and work our life around those limitations, those deficits. And it's not easy. We need to realise that we are totally responsible for our own recovery, totally responsible for making improvements after our brain injury, after our stroke. Yeah, of course, we can get professional help. We can get physiotherapy, we can get occupational therapy, we can get clinical psychology, we can get massage, we can get whatever we can get helps. But at some point, that will stop. So we may have assistance in those areas for a few weeks, a few months, if we're lucky, a few years. But at some stage, it will stop. And at some stage, we're on our own. But that doesn't mean our ability to make improvements stops at that point, because we still have the ability to make improvements, because we, you and I, can still put the work in to make improvements. So this whole thing about, oh, what can I do now? My physiotherapy has stopped. Well, we can do our own physiotherapy. We've either learnt enough from the physiotherapy that we've been having that we can continue to do our own, or we can find other means to do it. But one thing's for sure, with human nature, if we want something badly enough, history shows us that we will find a way to do it. It's a tough message, but it's very true. We are responsible for our own health. So part of our ability to make improvements after our event will be about, well, okay, what am I putting in my body? Because my body is only going to be as good as the things that I'm putting in it. So if I'm putting in it popcorn, if I'm putting in it fizzy drinks and soda, if I'm putting in it processed foods, if I'm putting in it a lot of refined carbohydrates, as opposed to fresh meat, vegetables, fresh fruit, etc., then that's what every cell in my body is going to be comprised of. It's going to, if I'm eating quite a bit of junk food, takeouts, cheap burgers, cheap food, etc., that is what I'm going to be comprised of. Every cell in my body is going to be comprised of junk food. And I find it amazing that we would probably give ourselves something to eat that we wouldn't give our pets. We'd like to give our pets the best stuff, the best food that we can get for our pets, because their health depends on it, but we'll put any old rubbish inside of us. Food for thought. The trumpet player Louis Armstrong once said about playing the trumpet, the more you put in, the more you'll get out. And that holds true for many things in life. Learning a musical instrument, the more you practice, the better you'll get. But it also holds true for making improvements after stroke and brain injury. The more work you can put in, the more improvements you'll make. And it's very glib, very easy to say that, but it's actually true. So when you're facing your darkest days and you think, I can't cope with this anymore, I don't know what to do, nobody is helping me, I don't understand, you've just got to keep trying. You just got to keep putting more effort in, because you will get the result out. Because one thing's for sure, if you don't do that and you just sit back and don't do anything, you won't make any improvements. It's the old use it or lose it philosophy. So just try and bear that in mind. The more effort you put in, the harder you work, the greater the improvements you will make, the more you'll get out. What you put in is what you get out. I guess many of us will have physical deficits, but don't ignore the mental or the emotional ones. Because it's easy to think, oh, I'm not in denial, I don't really have any issues with this, I don't really have any issues with anxiety. But we ignore those at our peril. I've got somewhere between 25 and 30 videos on YouTube at the moment. By far and away the least popular, the less viewed of those videos deal with mental and emotional issues. So I've done a video on denial. Of course, we all deny that we're in denial, so that hasn't got too many views. I've done a video on anxiety, but we don't really have much anxiety, so I don't need to watch that. But the videos about the physical issues, how to get a bit more movement in an affected hand, for an example, they get hundreds of views compared to the tens of views that the videos addressing mental and emotional issues get, because we don't really like talking about it. We don't really like going there. It's better to pretend it's not there, move on, I'll be fine, nothing to see here. That might work in the short term, but it doesn't in the long term, because we can only lift up the carpet and sweep stuff under for so long before we start then having a big pile under the carpet. And that's when problems start. So please don't ignore the mental and emotional issues. We need to deal with those in exactly the same way that we deal with the physical issues. We need to be open about them, we need to be honest about them, we need to talk about them, and we need to get professional help. We don't seem to have an issue getting professional help from physical therapists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, but getting help from a psychologist. Oh, I see posts on Facebook about, oh, I don't need to see a psychologist. Yeah, I've been there. I was like that. I actually use those words. I don't need to see a psychologist. I'm fine. I've now, 8 years on obviously, seen 2 psychologists, and they've helped me immensely. But it meant me being brave enough to put my hand up and go, I have a problem. So physical side is fine. The mental and emotional side, please don't ignore it. Deal with any issues you think you have there. Look for help, look for guidance. Everybody's situation is unique. So you need to become an expert in your situation. Become an expert about the injury that you have. Talk to your doctors, get hold of scans, get hold of discharge reports, read them. If you don't understand them, talk to your doctors. If not, Google phrases, Google words, see what they mean, study, learn, understand what has happened to your brain, understand what the different parts of the brain that have been damaged by your brain injury, by your stroke, what the implications of that are, understand the medications that you're on, what those mean, what the potential side effects are. If it seems that you're having trouble with a particular medication, talk to your doctor about changing it to another one. Just become an expert in your situation. Really, really understand. yes, it means making an effort. Yes, it means studying stuff, reading stuff, researching stuff, finding out about stuff. But it's actually quite easy to do. We can sit down behind our computer and do most of it. So providing we have access to a computer, providing we can use Google, and I guess you're watching this video having gone onto your Facebook account and found the link. If you can do that, you can use Google. So there's no excuse really why any of us can't find out far more about our circumstances than we currently know, and really become an expert in our situation, because it's down to us. It's our responsibility. My health is my responsibility, nobody else's. So become an expert in your situation. Another thing that I've learned is that this is a very long process. And I distinctly remember sitting up in hospital after my stroke, after my brain surgery, various tubes and wires and leads coming out of everywhere, going everywhere into various machines, bleeping and all the rest of it. And a physiotherapist visiting me and saying, you need to look at your recovery in 6-week chunks. And I couldn't compute this at all. It was like 6-week chunks. And in my head, simply because the longest I'd ever been ill was 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I think I maybe had off work for 3 weeks with a bad back. The idea of looking at recovery in 6-week chunks, i.e. not just 6 weeks, but there would be another 6 weeks and another 6. I couldn't get my head around that at all, because in my head I'm thinking, well, I'm 6 weeks, at the end of 6 weeks I'll be back at work. And here we are, coming up for 8 years onwards, and I haven't returned to work, and probably won't. I had no idea of the length of time scale involved. To me, being ill was something that you got over in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops. Okay, I've had brain surgery, so let's just make it 5 or 6 weeks, that, and then I'll be fine, be all good, be back to normal. And I hadn't appreciated how severe brain injury, stroke can be, and therefore the implications of that, and how long it's going to take to just even start walking again, let alone getting back to work. So that's a key thing. It's a very, very long-term game. Yes, of course, there are some people who have a stroke and, they'll get over it very quickly, depending upon where the brain damage is and the amount of brain damage and so on and so forth. But they're the exception. The norm is that, it's going to take some time to get any kind of functionality back and get back to some kind of functioning existence. And I think most of the aftercare that we have is aimed not at getting us back to where we were pre-event, but aimed at getting us kind of functional. So we move from a hospital bed to a rehab bed, from a rehab bed to back at home, but maybe with a level of care visitors visiting every day. It's a process. It's not like we're in hospital and we leave and we're back to work straight away. It's not like that at all. It's a very long-term game, much longer than I think most of us realise at the time. So there you have it, some lessons learned over the last 8 years. Please subscribe to the channel just by clicking on the subscribe button below. If you click on the bell notification icon, you'll also receive alerts as and when I upload new videos. And in case you haven't realised, this I think is about the 27th or 28th video that I've uploaded, so there's plenty more on the channel to view and digest. Hope you're keeping well. Look after yourselves. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye for now.